about that question, so one, I always start with the people, right? So what does your leadership look like? And when I say leadership, I think that there's a lot of different leadership styles that can work for a sustainable organization. However, you need servant leadership. I think that's the most sustainable, meaning like leaders are actually in the trenches with the people that are doing the work. And because of that, they gain valuable data in terms of what are the real problems that customers are facing. So I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, but I think that's where we start when we think about what does a sustainable organization look like. Because at the end of the day, people do great work when they're inspired by great leaders. Whether that's a vision, whether that's a product, and it's the only way that I think that you start to think about sustainable organizations.
When it comes to creating a sustainable organization, I think it comes down to two things. The first one is organizational design, and the second thing is culture. So you need to really put thought about what you're doing, how things are going to come together, and how you're going to execute on the plan. And that's what the organizational design is for. The culture is the people who are going to be executing on the vision. So you want to make sure that people have the drive, they have the right motivation, and they have the passion to fulfill on the mission. So when you bring those two things together, you can actually build a sustainable organization that will make sure that people and the whole team gets to the end goal.
When I think about how do you create a sustainable organization, I think about the ways in which you can minimize waste. So most people in tech, the tech Bible that a lot of people like to preach is lean startup. But lean startup came from this idea of lean manufacturing, which came from Toyota in Japan, right? So I think that what the Japanese call it is muda, right, which is waste. So you want to decrease waste. So in order to do that, I think about having the best people. I think about having the best leaders. And when I also think about that, I also think about creating community, right? Because if you can create community, then you can retain your customers and have a viable business, right? And in order to, like classic business 101 is that it costs 5 times more to go get a new customer than it does to just keep your current customers delighted and very happy, right? So that's, when you talk about building community, it's not only, okay, you delivered a product and you did what you promised you would pay that person for. It's how do we delight customers? How do we create a community such that our products, our services, our vision, what we're trying to share is so remarkable that others have to share it with other people, right? Like that's sustainability when I think about it long term. That's what 100-year companies are made of. So a sign that an organization is not sustainable, I would say, is turnover. So back to having the best people. If people don't want to stay there, then it's going to be hard for you to sustain as a business. And I would say also, I think about excessive CEO salaries. So you look at something like the baking industry. Lloyd Blankfein, Goldman Sachs CEO, at one point made $24 million in a year, right? Meanwhile, the global economy was crashing. So I think everybody can agree that that's not sustainable at all, right? For large banks to be bailed out while their CEOs are making, almost billions of dollars a year, or creating billions of dollars a year. So I would say paying CEOs excessively. So that goes back to like having servant leadership, leaders who actually serve the people that are doing the work, the people who are the customers. In addition to that first one, which was thinking about who you have in your organization. So if you have turnover and you paying CEOs exorbitantly, then that's a recipe for disaster.
It comes down to whether your organization is able to grow change and iterate over time. If you have a business or an organization that is doing this year what it was doing last year and the year before, it just means that over time, you haven't actually addressed the changing needs of your users or of your consumers. And no organization lives in a vacuum when it's constant in time. So a good sign is if you notice organizations that are not iterating and are passionate about serving the community better, then it's a sign that it's not going to be sustainable over the next 10, 20, or 100 years.
I think it's so hard to make things sustainable because of the simple fact that I feel as though technology has shaped human society in a way that we want the quick fix, right? You can turn on your phone and literally see something live on Facebook immediately. You can see a tweet, you can see an Instagram post, you can see things very immediately. Amazon has spoiled us. We can get 2-day shipping, right, on almost anything, right? So in order to create sustainability, I think organizations have to stop focusing on the quick fix, right? Whether that's, trying to be cheaper than your competitor, trying to compete on features and benefits, as opposed to what's the problems that you're really trying to solve, right? And are you truly adding value to people's lives? Which I think is why Apple has made it so far. I don't think they'll be sustainable in the future, quite frankly, but it was able to build this mass effect because Steve Jobs was focused on user design. People love Apple and people won't walk away from Apple because it's easy to use. Not because now you have to have 3 adapters to plug into your laptop to charge a phone, which again, personal preference, I don't think it will be sustainable. But it's very hard, I think, to create sustainability in the 21st century because I think not only are a lot of companies, but a lot of customers just want the quick fix. When we need to think long term about, like, climate change has no quick fix. Like, that's a long-term play. So the more long-term companies can think and continue to dedicate themselves to improving, the more sustainable that they can be.
I am inspired by Wikipedia, which was founded in 2001 with Jimmy Wales. I forgot the other guy, Larry Sager or something like that. And I'm gonna butcher this, but there's a concept that Richard Stallman, I think, is the person that was coming up with it, talking about online encyclopedia. And the mindset was creating something that had no centralized editors, that was the complete opposite of Microsoft and Carta at the time, that was very centralized. And what started off as a project that was supposed to be complementary to Nupedia, I think, quickly ballooned to being the 5th most popular website on the internet. And it's still one of the most popular websites on the internet that is supported by billions of editors that are keeping it current and updated and sustainable throughout. So they're listening to each other, respecting each other. There's no dictator that's telling them my way or the highway. But they're really doing a lot of amazing things. Very similar to like Craigslist and a lot of these things that are like super simple, but complex at the same time, that understands the community and are sustained by each other. Like Wikipedia takes, I think, like $1 donation a year. But with billions of people, you can last. It's very similar to grassroots organizing, where you take small checks and you're able to raise millions of dollars to keep it sustainable. Or even WhatsApp is a great example of like where they charge only $1 a year, and they work with a lot of immigrants. It's mostly popular in emerging countries. And if you look at immigration and repatriation of dollars going back to your countries, like they understood the needs of these people, they served their needs, and with just $1 from each of them, they became a company that's valued at tens of billions of dollars. They were acquired for $19 billion. But going back to these sustainable organizations and thinking about the ones that have lasted for hundreds of years without selling, I would say another organization I think deeply about is Nintendo. Nintendo was started in 1889, I believe. It started off as a playing card company, and they've been able to continue to evolve and listen and go into video games, all these things in the last, still today in this mobile era, where people are playing video games on their smartphones, people are still using the Switch and all these other games that are coming out. So if you look at, again, these companies that have lasted for hundreds of years, study Japan, study family, study grassroots organizers.
Well, I was just researching and trying to find like what are the companies that have lasted the longest. My research kept leading me back to Japan, and these were companies that were, a hotel in Japan that's existed since year 705, right? And something that I saw is that they passed these businesses down through their family and through their lineage, but there was a core focus on what they call kaizen, which is essentially continuous improvement. So not only were they passing it down through family who really cared about the purpose and the mission and the vision, they were continually trying to improve, right? So I think that purpose, mission, and continuous improvement are staples of any. Now, just because you have those three doesn't mean you will be sustainable. But having those three will ensure that you actually have a chance to be. So when I think about people, I would probably think of Seth Godin. This gentleman started in 1995, and he started to try to teach companies about what he called permission-based marketing, right? Because in the early 90s, marketing was, if you had a big marketing budget and you had the money, just put it on TV, you could get it in front of people, and we should interrupt people, right? But he created this idea of permission-based marketing, which was only market to people who need your service. And that blew up, and ever since then, he's been writing books about it. He's written 18 best-selling novels. He's created an organization called the Alt MBA, which is trying to transform education. And the way that he says he hires is strictly on if you've done work for him before. So he says he'll only hire a person if he makes them do like a small project, whether it's for free or on a consulting basis. But before he hires someone, he wants them to do the work for them. And I think that's a huge testament for how the tech industry can expand and grow in terms of being more sustainable. And it's by having people that you hire actually do work for you, right? Whether it's volunteering, whether that's, it really ties back to that deep human connection. So when I think of an individual, I think of Seth Godin. And when I think of the core principles of having sustainable business, I think of Japan, and I think of sake bars that have been open since the 1100s, all because they had this dedication to their core product and continuous improvement.